Today is the 5th of March, 2009. We are at the New York State Military Museum in Saratoga Springs, New York. The interviewer is Wayne Clark. And sir, for the record, would you please state your full name and your date and place of birth?
Yes, it's Douglas Stewart Thompson, and I was born in Long Island City, New York, June 27, 1947.
Okay, and you attended school there?
Harbor Fields High School in Green Lawn.
Okay.
I grew up in Centerport, about 35 miles from Manhattan on the North Shore.
Okay. And you graduated from high school?
In 1965.
Okay. And
On my birthday.
huh. Now, did you attend college, or did you go to work right away, or did you?
Well, I had a job since I was 15 in the supermarket, and I really enjoyed that. And I tried college at nights to get a deferment, but I was never a student.
Mm-hmm. Were you drafted, or did you enlist?
I was drafted, and I figured I could get a good duty station and a good career, so I enlisted.
Okay. And you enlisted in the Army?
Yes.
Okay. And what career field did you decide on?
Well, I was always interested in maps, map making, cartography, and I was accepted to the school in Fort Belvoir, New Jersey. Fort Belvoir, Virginia.
Okay.
And right before it was time to go and sign up, down to was it Fort Hamilton or Whitehall Street? I think we went Fort Hamilton. The recruiter came and said, "You can't be a map maker because you're going to be a 2-week holdover, so who would know?"
Mm-hmm.
And it was a hard school to get into. It
Uh-huh.
only took I think it was 20 guys at a shot or something. But as soon as I walked in the recruiting office the first time, he wanted me to be an MP because of my size.
Uh-huh.
And that's what I wanted, MP in Germany, and I wound up an MP in Vietnam.
Okay. Now, when did you enter the service?
Let's see, August the 12th, 1966.
Okay. And whereabouts did you go for your basic training?
They shipped us down to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. We stayed there for about a week, and then they took the whole big group, and half of us went to Fort Bliss, is where I took basic, and the other half went to Fort Ord.
Okay. Fort Bliss, was that in Texas?
Yeah, El Paso, Texas.
Okay. Was that your first time away from home?
For a long period
Yeah.
of time, I went to check out art schools in Boston a couple of times,
Mhm.
overnight trips,
Okay.
Gettysburg, and some Civil War battlefields, but this is my longest stretch away from home, yes.
Okay. What was basic training like for you?
I didn't mind basic. It was a little rough getting into shape and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but all in all, I got through it. It was no problem.
Mm-hmm. Okay. After basic, where did you go next?
Fort Gordon, Georgia for military police.
Okay. Did you get any kind of leave in between? Or?
Nope, it was the first time they didn't give leave in between the two,
Okay.
basic and AIT.
Okay. So you went to Fort Gordon, Georgia.
And that's when it all started.
Okay. And what was that school like?
It was very difficult. I think they wanted to break our spirit, and I think make us real people with attitude.
Uh-huh.
And it was rough. We had idle time. We were either doing push-ups or sit-ups or whatever. We always had to be at either attention or parade rest. And
Mhm.
we were being eaten by mosquitoes. You know, they would holler at us for hitting the mosquitoes because we were killing their private property. They always said the mosquitoes were theirs. And no hands in the pockets, no buttons
Mhm.
undone. I always thought that the basic was so much more relaxed than the military police training. Everything was spit and polished up very early.
Hmm. Did you get any sort of like hand-to-hand training or weapons training?
In MP school?
Yeah.
We did judo. I remember it wasn't that extensive. Maybe it was once a week for the 8 weeks. And what can you learn?
Yeah.
I think the only thing I really learned was how to fall, not to get hurt.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then the 45 training. And then when orders came for Vietnam, we got the Republic of Vietnam training. And that was 7 weeks. I mean, that was in the 7th week.
Okay, so right before the end of your school, you knew that you were going to Vietnam.
Yeah, it was right around Thanksgiving we got orders.
Okay. When you graduated, did you get any kind of leave time to go home?
36 days.
Okay.
And I got sick in my 6th week. I was really sick. And back then, if you lost 3 days of training, I don't know how it is now, they kick you back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I already had my orders. And I didn't want to be broken up with all my friends, what
Yeah.
I'm over with. So when I was in the hospital, every time they took my temperature, I'd have ice in my mouth. And I got my temperature down, even though it was up.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to get out of that place. So I wound up going with my unit.
Okay. Now, what was it like for you when you went home on leave, knowing that you were going to Vietnam?
I remember when I got drafted, it was like breaking away
Mm-hmm.
and really, to go see the world or whatever. And then when Vietnam came, I was always interested in the Civil War since I was about 10. So another case was like, I think the mentality that a lot of men have about going away to a new experience and
Mm-hmm.
mom and apple pie and pretty girls and everything, and defending the country. And I was in for a big shock.
Mm-hmm. So you were pretty gung-ho at that point.
I think I was semi-gung-ho.
Mm-hmm. When did you actually leave to go to Vietnam? Approximately.
Oh God, I came home on the 20th and I got 4 days off. So it was early January, I think it's one of these photos here.
Okay.
So
Okay. And whereabouts did you land in Vietnam?
I can't remember if it's Long Ben or Ben Hoa. One of them had a
Okay.
airport and the other one had the barracks for replacement group.
Okay. All right. And what was your impression when you stepped off the plane?
Well, to tell you the truth, I didn't even get off the plane and I seen things were screwed up. As we were on the runway coming to a stop, we were all basically getting up and this and that. And I looked out the window of the plane on the right side, and I seen the Vietnamese in black pajamas and one of these straw hats with a big iron rake on the blacktop of the runway. So that struck me as strange. And we went a little further, and it looked like the guy's twin brother on the other side in the grass with a great big huge, like street sweeping broom. So right away, the plane didn't even stop, and I said, this place is, what am I doing here? Because that just struck me as
Mm-hmm.
nobody's telling anybody anything. I would like to go back, though,
Mm-hmm.
to MP school for a second.
Sure.
Is that all right?
Yep.
In our 7th week of training, in the 7th week of training, we had Vietnam training, and it was called convoys. So all the trucks in the convoy, we had about maybe 20 3/4 tons and 2 deuce and a halves. And they would take us through all these back roads in Georgia, and we would be attacked, or they would jump up out of the ground, whatever. It's things that we had to expect. But everything was sandbags. The hood of the vehicles, the interior where your road was sandbagged, and the whole bed of the trucks was sandbagged.
Mhm.
So, we'll go back to Vietnam. I remember getting on a screened-in bus with the windows open, like a brown and gray school bus. And they took us to the 90th replacement. Well, all the way from the airport to the 90th replacement, we went through like little villages or places where they lived. And they were all living in what do they call those big cargo things, containers.
Mhm.
And there was like paper and tin cans, and some of them, I guess the more wealthier ones, I think had metal ones. And I kept looking and seeing the poverty, and I'm saying, I don't own the TV set that's colored. And I says, how can we afford, I mean, these people have no use for something like a colored TV.
Mhm.
I says, what are we doing here? They look very happy with the meager existence that they have. It was almost like we were going over trying to force ourselves on them.
Mhm.
So,
Okay. Now, did you receive any sort of in-country indoctrination or in-country training at all?
no, we just sat and wait. I remember Westmoreland came one day, and I got fairly close to him.
Mhm.
But I think it was basically just waiting for our names to be called back, because we knew I had orders for the 716th Military Police. So.
Uh-huh. Okay, and
Guard duty and stuff.
where exactly were they located?
What's that?
The unit?
Could I go and
Oh,
tell
sure.
you 2 stories about the 90th
Sure.
replacement? My military police company, the training company, we went over in 3 groups, and I wound up with 36 days because I was Thompsen at the end of the list, so
Yep.
I got a couple extra days. Well, one of the guys wasn't in country one day, and they sent him home because they had these little bunkers out in the perimeter of the base at the camp, and sandbagged, and he just took one of the shotguns that he was using to, guard. I think they only had a couple of rounds, and he put it against his leg, and he blew his leg off. And he wasn't in country 1 or 2 days. And then when our names finally were called out, they came up with a 3.5-ton truck. So I feel like this gawky kid, because I'm 6'6" and all. And I got my duffel bag and my AWOL bag and all the other stuff, and I'm running over to this 3/4-ton truck to get on the Saigon, and it was like a cartoon. I stopped myself, and I like slid over toward the guy in my heels. And I said to the driver, I said, I'm not getting in that vehicle. And he says to me, why? I says, there's no sandbags. And then he went into hysteria and started laughing. He says, they fool all of you guys, don't they? So, just kept, the stuff just kept piling up
Mhm.
that I wasn't expecting. Then we went down to Saigon.
Okay. What were your living conditions like with your unit?
This was upsetting to me. We lived in a hotel in Tran Hung Dao, the International Hotel. And it was in between like the river, if I remember, and Cholon.
So you weren't on a military base
No,
per
we
se?
were in a hotel.
Okay.
And they used to blow places up in Saigon, the Viet Cong did. There's some amusing stories on what they would do once in a while, throw a hand grenade and not open the window and blow themselves up. So I realized that the Viet Cong and the Vietnamese were just as stupid as our officers were. So they used to blow these places up with cars pulling in and blowing up in the lobby of a building.
Mhm.
So what they did, they put 55-gallon drums with concrete around a lot of these. We had about 130 to 150, I think, places to guard in the city of Saigon, plus, road and foot patrols. So the hotel had all of this, but what always bothered me, we lived on the second, third, and fourth floor of the hotel. The first floor was all stores. So, you know, you had to go through people's possessions and frisk them and this and that, but you know, after a while you can't catch everything.
Mm-hmm.
And they could hide stuff, a little piece of plastic every day, come in and make a bigger piece of plastic.
Mm-hmm.
So I always used to think about stuff like this. And then there was a newspaper printing office under us and a restaurant on the other side. I remember looking through their cans. They would have soup cans and food cans that they bought to go to work or whatever in. What are you going to do, start pulling through their soup? And they could have a little explosive in there at any time. So it was a constant fear, even living in the hotel, because you never felt secure.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived on the fourth floor, and I was never comfortable there.
Now, did you have your own room, or did you share
A room with there was 5 of us in my room.
Okay. And did you have a bathroom to share?
Yeah, we shared, 5 of us shared a bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
You had to take a shower at a certain time because you could be taking a shower and all of a sudden you'd be soaked up and we'd run out of water. They used to bring water into us in buffaloes, water buffaloes, and we had to carry up these big glass, you know, that was no big thing, water cooling stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And some had air conditioning, and
Now, what about your meals?
meals, we went to a place called the Keeson, and that was like 2 blocks away, and we'd get food chits, and we'd go in and use these chits to eat on.
Now, were you eating American food or Oriental food?
American food, made by Orientals,
Okay.
made by the Vietnamese. With mess halls, I guess, with Army supervisors.
Okay. How was the food there?
I think it was okay.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever eat any of the local food anywhere?
Yeah, and I got really, really sick. And I got a funny feeling that it was the bee trying to did it to me.
Uh-huh.
I was guarding the radio station, and you know, they never came and checked on us all the time. Half the time the radios didn't work. If something did happen, you needed assistance, you can call and call and call, and nobody came.
Mm-hmm.
It was screwed up. It was really screwed up. And one night, I was guarding the radio station, and this wonderful, wonderful, beautiful Vietnamese woman came to me and started talking to me. And she was dressed to the hilt. It was like an ambassador's girlfriend or a general's girlfriend or a high-ranking officer's girlfriend. She had some English, you know, pidgin English, but anyway. And we were talking, and she says, "Are you hungry?" And I says, "Yeah, I could do something to eat." So she went and brought me back some sweet and pungent fish that were wrapped in palm leaves.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be, you know, unappreciated or anything, so I ate some of it. And I wound up in the hospital for, I think it was 8-9 days with 106 temperature. And I don't know where it all comes from, but I wasn't eating and stuff was still coming out of my body. So I always thought that, you know, they liked the fact that it would take how many people, if we were wounded or
Mm-hmm.
sick, instead of killing you, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
But if they make you sick or wounded, that's costing us money.
Yeah.
I always had that idea. I was set up.
Now, after that incident happened, you never, I take it you probably never ate any of the local
No.
cuisine again.
No.
Did you ever see that woman again? Or?
No. No.
Okay. Now, these guard positions, were they manned, these stations manned 24 hours a day?
Yes. And this is what got me too. I always had an issue with this. A lot of these facilities had big generators, diesel generators, and to this day, I really get wound up tight if somebody's parked next to me with a generating truck. I mean, a diesel truck.
Mhm.
And our hearing was limited on account of this. And then they had lights, but I always was upset about this. Instead of the lights shining out, they shined the lights in on us. So our vision was cut down. Our hearing was cut down. We never had our weapons. The only time we could get our weapons was when we went on duty.
Mhm.
And we had 100 rounds of M16 and 21 rounds of 45. Our guns, we could have a clip in it, but not a round in the chamber.
Mhm.
And we had a procedure that you have to blow your whistle if somebody parks in front of you. And if they don't move with a whistle blow or, a couple hollers or whatever, then you were supposed to put a round in the chamber. And if they still didn't move, then you open up and kill them. So, every night, I always remembered this later on, Hill Street Blues. The sergeant would always talk to the men as they're going out. And they always used to tell us the same story every night. Don't kill unless you're fired upon. And if you're fired upon and you're killed, make sure they don't have a card that they're attached with the embassy or whatever.
Mhm.
So here you are, you're sitting out in this bunker, you're lit up, you can't hear, your gun is empty, and they're told if you kill somebody that's a good guy, you're going to go to Leavenworth for life. It wasn't pleasant.
Mm-mm. Now, did you have any problem with your relief coming?
Yes, yes, yes. Here's a good story. One night they were posting us. They used to post us in school buses, gray Navy school buses. And of course we're all wired in there and everything. And we're at a traffic light one night. And all of a sudden, everything stops. There's 30 MPs on this bus. And the Vietnamese came and clipped our batteries and stole the batteries as we were on this bus. So there was a setup. You couldn't get out of the bus,
Mhm.
and if we stayed in the bus, but it was this constant. And I thought about this all the time. I says, this is when they're going to get us while we're stopped in this bus. So you always had to have a mind that was always looking.
Mhm.
And always anticipating the stupidest little things.
Mhm. Now, did you ever actually have to do combat with any of the Viet Cong or?
No, it was all sniper fire
Mhm.
with nit and pick.
Mhm.
One night I got shot at, and I heard the shot, I thought, oh, Jesus. This never made sense to me either. We used to guard the generals' houses in Saigon. They all had these big villas.
Mhm.
And there was one general, and God, I hated to guard this post. I always trade, and then never wanted to go back to this post. It was the last time I worked it. And he had a German Shepherd. And in the morning, he let the German Shepherd loose and go out and chase the EMP. It was a vicious dog. And well, this sick, stupid stuff. But that one night, I was working his house. It was a Vietnamese guard across the street from me. I forgot what was there. But a guy with a red beret and fatigues and all, and I don't know what he had. I think he had maybe an M1 or something. And all of a sudden, a couple blocks away, rounds go off. So I buttoned up. We always had to have our steel pots and flak jackets on. So I get all buttoned up. this Jeep comes. And as the Jeep is coming, it's right, I'm in the middle of this street, and the Jeep was down to my right. And I looked across the street just to get an idea what I'm up against and this and that. The Vietnamese guard took off. God knows where he went. And when the Jeep got about halfway through the intersection, the Jeep starts shooting. And I go down in the keyhut, the bunker, and I come up, and the rounds are going overhead. And I come up, and I still see enough of the Jeep. And I could have put a clip right into the passenger side of the Jeep. But then again, I thought, I said, what happens if this is two people out drunk? And I wind up killing 2 American soldiers. God knows who they were. So I never returned fire. But there was a lot of sniping going on, wounding guys. There was a Vietnamese major and a woman that would ride around on a motorcycle. I remember a couple of times following them when I was off duty in a taxi cab or something. But they would just pull up to people and then take off with a 45. But it was all little nit and pick stuff, you know. And one day, and I can't prove this, I've been working on it since 1987. It was April the 3rd, and I get up and I go to the PX. I was still in Saigon. I come down to the street, I hail a cab, and I always used to go into the rear gate. And this day I went into the front gate. And I must have been maybe about 3/4 of a block or so. And I remember going by 2 officers. I think one was a captain, the other one was a major, and they were in their suntans. And both had eyeglasses, and they looked like CEOs or something, really professional looking officers. And I could still see, I glanced at them with my vision, my peripheral vision, and I can still see them standing there. Well, we get to the front gate of the PX. I says, I'm just putting my feet, I must be about a half an inch off the pavement. And a claymore went off and killed us 2 officers. I just missed getting killed. And I seen those guys take their last breath. All stuff to add on to the bullcrap. I mean, there was always, they came in the village in the city a couple times with mortars. And there was such excellent, well, you were there, there were such good mortar people.
Now, was your hotel ever hit with mortars or rockets?
No, but they were moving Vietnamese airborne unit through Saigon. It was like in the afternoon. So they brought in an 81 millimeter mortar, and they just took that. They bounced those rounds right down that street and ripped that airborne unit apart. And then they hit the Chinese embassy. They blew that up. Well, that wasn't too far from us. And I remember I went and took pictures in the morning because they blew it up at night. And there was still a lot of stuff around.
Now, weren't they allied with the Chinese, though?
Or there's a big rift between the Chinese and the Chinese always, Cholang was a whole Chinese section. And Chinese was, and Cholang was just leveled. The Chinese had all the money. They didn't have money. All your big businessmen and all, they were all Chinese. At least that's the way it was in the city. So maybe it was the other Chinese embassy, I don't know, but they blew up a Chinese embassy. I remember there was still like bodies and stuff around, and I took pictures, but I never got them back. I got a story that upset me, and it still upsets me over the years. I was on road patrol one night, and I pick up an American businessman. I don't know, he was over there with one of the construction companies or something. It was about maybe about 3 o'clock in the morning. And he had a little son, 2-year-old boy, and the boy was having trouble breathing. So we took him to the 17th Field Hospital. And we get inside, the man's there asking the doctors to take care of him. He was in some kind of a convulsion.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor stood there and refused. And make a long story short, that man got down on his hands and knees and was holding his baby. And they let that baby die right there. If that happened now, I would have pulled my pistol out, threw a round in the chamber, and put it against the doctor's head and says, either you die or the baby dies.
Mm-hmm.
But that was all constant. It wasn't pleasant. It was a year that really sucked. I mean, we weren't like out in the field being shot at and this and that all the time, but it was just constant. It was always like you were being watched, and nobody knew what they were doing, and who was in control.
Mm-hmm.
I never expected life to be like that. My first experience leaving home.
Mm-hmm.
And
What did you do on with your time off when you were
got
off
drunk
duty?
and stoned, and I found out that smoking pot didn't make you stupid. I could always react with smoking pot,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't do that with drinking. You know, usually if something happened, you get yourself back to some kind of order to handle the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay. Did you, you mentioned the Australians. Did you have much
oh, I love
Work-
the
work in
Australians.
contact with them?
They were signals. They called themselves SIGs. And I got so close to them that they adopted me.
Did they live in the hotel too?
No, they lived in Cholong. They lived down near the PX, and we had an A and B company in Cholong. So we were away from A and B company. We were in C company was in, down toward the river more in Saigon. And I started hanging out with them. I got along better with the Australians than my own, because they were very free and fun-loving. First time I drank with a bunch of Australians, they left their money right there in the wallet, and everything right on the bar, and they came back. And they said to me, you're one of the few Americans that don't treat us like we're second-class citizens. Well, I think Americans a lot of time doesn't want anybody to pay for the drinks, blah, blah. You know, there's a certain attitude. Maybe that's how I just perceive some people, I don't know, but yeah, I got very close with them. Matter of fact, I spent Christmas, this is a funny story, I spent Christmas with the Australians, and I didn't plan on it. But I got an address book at home with all these names and addresses, and I never got in touch with them because they leveled the hotel where the Australians lived. They took a whole city block or two, and I just didn't want to open up any wounds with the families or anything, so I always stayed away from getting in contact with them. But it was Christmas Eve. I was TDY with the Air Force. I was supposed to go back to Saigon and work in the post office in Saigon assorting mail. My first sergeant got me that job. I was really close with my first sergeant. And instead I wound up in the Saigon airmail terminal moving mail. And I would take time off. We had a black captain, and one of my black friends would go over. He had a captain's uniform, and he'd tell the Air Force that I was on some special mission. I would be in for a week, so I got a week's vacation. And then I would get sick slips once in a while. So the Air Force was getting hip to me. And what had me upset with the Air Force, I was on the midnight shift, and we had to bring the big tractor trailers in, unload them, break them down by APOs, and then load them and send them in country out and go back to the air base with them. We moved about 150 ton a night of mail. We had like 11 guys on our shift. The other shifts had double the amount of men, if not more, and they were moving half of what we had, the day shift and the second shift.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are humped, and here's the army, the military again. When did you put the bulk of the guys at the heaviest time? You know?
Mm-hmm.
So I was enjoying life my last month or so in Vietnam, my last month. And I was also company artist for a while. And, because I couldn't take police duty anymore, and I got myself off of line duty over there, because it was all so insane. Too much pain. And a friend of mine from military intelligence, he stole the 3/4 ton truck, and we were going to go and see Bob. And this Air Force bird colonel comes down and says, "We know you're up to funny business, but we can't prove it." And he says, "Don't get any ideas about taking Christmas off." I says, "Okay." And when I left, I says, "I'm taking Christmas off. The hell with that guy." And I came back to my camp, and I went to the dentist. And I told this dentist, he was a major from New Jersey, I'll never forget him. He was a nice, nice man. I says, "Doc," I says, "this tooth is killing me." He says, "What's wrong?" I says, "Just rip it out, I can't take it anymore." So I sacrificed the tooth to go see Bob Hope. Because I went back and seen that full bird colonel, and my mouth was bleeding, and I had a note that had me off of duty for 2 days. And I shook it down as he gave me. And we went to see Bob Hope, but we wound up in some Australian base camp somewhere. And all the guys were there at this base camp, and there was a blonde entertainer. She was nice. She used to be in Saigon sometimes, too. And that's where I spent Christmas Eve and Christmas morning. And we were being hit all night, though. Machine guns all night long. I was sleeping in the front seat of the 3/4 ton. It always seemed like I was really drunk at this point. And I didn't do drugs with the Australians, I drank with them. And you know the mosquitoes and stuff over there. It felt like they were picking me up and dropping me all night.
Did you ever see any other USO shows or anything while you were there?
No, I never got to see that one.
Uh-huh. Any kind of local entertainment?
Oh yeah, the bars where we ate, they had music every night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And when did you actually end up leaving Vietnam? Well, before we get to that, you mentioned your father had a World War II helmet.
Yes, yes. My father had a helmet liner he brought home with him. He was in the 87th Infantry. He was a mess sergeant. He started out as a machine gunner, and I guess they were hit, and both guys were killed. He just survived. And he wound up as a mess sergeant. He served General Patton twice. My father had high regards for General Patton. And I have his helmet liner, and they sent it to me when I was overseas in Vietnam. And I wore that in Vietnam. The Vietnamese painted it as an MP, as they had different edit paints, and I was working with them, the steel parts. And that was in 2 wars, and I'm going to donate it up here, along with the history of the family.
Okay. And when did you actually end up leaving Vietnam?
11 days before Tet, 4 days short of my dear Rose.
Okay. And when you came back to the States, were you discharged at that point, or did you?
Oh, Jesus. The epic continues. I was, do we have time?
Oh, sure, yeah.
In basic training, I bought a Polaroid camera, and I made money on this side to pay for the camera and other things. So I would take pictures of guys as they were writing letters home. And there was always this one guy, Winkowski was his name, he was from Pittsburgh. I never charged him for photographs. So lo and behold, we go into like the pub, this bar that was in our base camp. And here he is, drinking beer. So we're hugging each other and we're drinking this and that. And he says to me, where do you want to go when you get home? And I said, New York, because I'm only 35 miles out of, Manhattan. So he said, okay. And his job was up north, in charge of all the military records, going and coming. And I waited a long, long time before my paperwork came in. Usually you would have stuff about a month, I think. You would have some idea where you were going. I waited until the 9th day. I had 9 days left. I didn't know. I thought they forgot about me. So I always wondered if he took care of me. So I wound up in the Armed Forces Police Detachment. I worked with the New York City Police at the 1-8 precinct on West 54th Street for 18 months. Good things. I guarded Hubert Humphrey's Air Force 2 one night at LaGuardia Airport. Of all people to pick, they picked me as non-commissioned officer in charge. I made buck sergeant on my 3rd try because I told them what they wanted to hear. And I was in charge of hanging the flag at Shea Stadium opening day, 1969, when Montreal played its first game ever. So that was an honor. And we're all back from Vietnam. It was Marines and soldiers. And we had about 6 or 7 up in front of me. And when the game started, they put us way, 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 way up in the bleachers. And they gave us an order that we couldn't leave until the game was over. Here we were, Vietnam vets, back in the world. Don't you think they would have had like decent seats down below for us? So.
Now, your job at the police department, being that you were a military policeman, did you have to go out and pick up people on Naval?
Yeah, we had a
deserters?
50-mile radius of Manhattan. I think the farthest we went was West Point. And picked up a lot of guys. I used to walk through the bus terminal. Oh, that was neat too. I walked through the bus terminal and one night, and I'll never forget, they were all upset, and they had this black kid locked up in the police department, Port of Authority Police Department room at the Port of Authority, the bus terminal. And they were shooting Midnight Cowboy. John Voight and Dustin Hoffman. It was toward the end of the movie when they were going to get bus tickets and go to Florida. So I was there for all of that, but they locked up one of the extras, the MP guys before me. And I had a fight to get him out. But I used to be, when I came home from Vietnam, I was a prick, I admit. And I just got to the point where that didn't last long, and I wouldn't even arrest people and let them go. I said, well, I'm going to be responsible for these young kids' deaths. So a lot of times I looked the other way. But if I had to go and get somebody, of course I would bring them in. But instead of shaking guys down on the street, I didn't last long at doing that.
Okay.
One night, 69, coldest January night, we were walking the bus terminal, and it was an old man. Back then we called them bums. Now they call them street people. And they threw him out twice. And he had a red and black checkered woolen hat that folded down and have the inside folded down for the earmuffs. Very, very old, skinny. He wore an army dress green top, a summer issue. And the third time he snuck back in, he was a frail old man. The last time he snuck in, they grabbed him and dragged him out to the street. My partner and I, and the Port of Authority cop. Well, all of a sudden, a police car, New York City police car pulls in from the 14th or the 1-4 precinct. Two big cops get out. They open the back door toward the curb, and they sat this old man down, and with his legs out up on the sidewalk. So, this Port of Authority cops is, we're heading out, and he's dragging this old man. He says, I want to show you guys how we keep this place clean. So, we get out, like set the guy up that his feet are up on the sidewalk, and one of the big cops jumped up and came down and broke his legs. You could hear the legs break. So, I said to myself, what had I just witnessed? And I turned around, and in my head I kept thinking, I said, Jesus, this was somebody's baby. This guy could be like a veteran, and he's out in the street because he's screwed up. And not a word was said. The two guys from the 14th got back in the car and took off and headed downtown. So I said, geez, I'm probably going down to St. Vincent's. So I turned around to the cop finally, and I said, what did we just witness here? And he says, this is how we keep the bums out. And I says, well, what are they doing with them? And they said they're going to go and dump them in one of the rivers. My country was doing this while we're having guys over in Vietnam being shot at and killed. Never made any sense. None of it made any sense. Who do you tell?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll wind up in the river. So I used to do a lot of heavy drink.
So you were with that outfit for 18 months?
Yes, I was.
And at that point, did you ETS?
Yeah, I ETS'd out of there.
Okay.
I went Naval. My last stay in the Army.
Okay. And where did you ETS from? Fort Dix? Or?
Fort Wadsworth across the river from Fort Hamilton.
Okay. All right. And what date was that when you were discharged?
August the 11th, 1969. A couple of days before Woodstock. I never made it there.
Okay. When you were discharged, you went back home?
Oh, I lived at home. I drove back and forth like a job.
Okay.
I got paid to live at home, $70 a month or something.
Okay.
My whole paycheck, I think, was under $300 as a E5.
Okay. And once you were discharged, did you make use of the GI Bill?
I collected some money for going to a community college for a while, but I was never a student, and I worked in a factory, and I got paid money as a factory worker, but
Okay.
factory work was horrendous.
And this was down in the New York City?
No, this was up here.
Up here?
Yeah, I moved up here as soon as I got out. Came up
Okay.
in 1970.
Okay. And well, what did you do after that?
Oh, Jesus, smoked and did a lot of acid, a lot of drugs. I had a car repossessed. I went out and I lived in the woods for about 2 years. And finally, no work up here, because I had long hair when I came up here.
Mm-hmm.
I got out in August of 69, and I moved up here in maybe July or September, somewhere around, about a year before I moved up here,
Mm-hmm.
I should say. So my hair got long. I couldn't find work up here because of the way I looked. And I got a job in the post office as a substitute driver. And I was in the bar one night, and I heard two guys in the bar in the town where I live, and I heard two guys talking about unemployed Vietnam veterans. So I slithered down, I was listening, I felt like a snake slithered. There was nobody else in the bar. So, the sheriff's office was going to hire somebody to be a dispatcher. They were looking for 3 dispatchers, and I got one of the jobs. And loved the job. One of the best jobs I ever had, because I always felt I was doing something for humanity. Mm-hmm. But I didn't last there 14 years. That drove me crazy with all that politicking. They used to let people, they wouldn't answer. The guys under me, I had 6 guys under me who didn't give a shit. And I can tell you horror stories in there too. Leaving people out all night because they were from New Jersey or whatever. And so I wound up in the VA in '87 with PTSD. And they transferred me over to solid waste, and I wound up running the transfer station. Mm-hmm. But I spent years picking up recyclable paper and everything else. I did that for about 10 years.
Okay. And then what year did you retire?
I'll be 62, and I retired 6 years ago. So 2003 maybe. Okay. I couldn't take work and being around people anymore. Mm-hmm. And my drinking's got so bad, my wife almost left me quite a few times. I always wound up drinking more than drugs. Maybe I always liked drugs, but drinking I think was cheaper. Mm-hmm. But I hated the sickness, and that's how I really quit, was I hated the day after. Hated them. But that would be nothing for me to drink a quart of scotch or a quart of gin a day. So finally I told my wife, I said, I'll have 1 beer a day. I used to like those big Australian Foster cans. Mm-hmm. So she would buy me one. But I drink about 6 of them coming home. She didn't really know that about it. By the time I had the one that she got, she'd be laughing. But yeah, I always kept the buzz to keep the little pictures out of my head, because I could go on about both places. Mm-hmm. The horror stories. When you're a policeman, you see the pits of society. You know?
Okay.
What's in it?
Okay. And you've got some photographs
Yes.
to show?
Yes. My platoon was wiped out in TAT 68. Am I still on?
Yep.
Okay. And I was just home 11 days. And there's some pictures here of them. They went into BOQ3 and they couldn't get in, so the lieutenant took them down a dead-end alley, and they were just sitting there waiting. And this Lieutenant Waltman, I told you before when we were talking, didn't like me, and he made me get a haircut 3 times in one day. And the guy that cut my hair, this was right before TAT, so Jesus, it was about a month before TAT. The guy that cut my hair 3 times was in barbed wire at the back of our compound when they were trying to overrun our compound. So, this is, I don't know how we can do this.
Yeah, if you want to just hold them up in front of you.
All right.
Just bring them back towards you,
Uh-huh.
and I can focus in on them. Okay, now that top...
The top one is, his last name was Jefferson, and he was from Detroit. He took a head wound, he lost sight in one eye. And these are 2 pretty famous pictures.
Okay.
And he wound up working for the post office, and he was retired now.
Okay, and that's him again in the bottom picture.
Bottom of Lieutenant Waltman.
Okay.
And Waltman hit a booby trap door that blew up in his face. I think his face had some wounds on it.
Okay.
Okay.
You lower that.
Okay. And then here is where they're loading the APC. They were trapped in this alley for 18 hours before they could get the dead and wounded out. And I think my company got 5 silver stars. And that's dragging one of the bodies out.
Okay.
And I have a lot of guilt over this. Survivor guilt. I never was comfortable with my well-being
Okay.
after this. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And,
Okay.
all right.
All right. How do you think you mostly alluded to this through the interview, but overall, how do you think your time in the service changed or affected your life?
Oh, it affected me a lot. A lot.
And are you going through any sort of treatment at all today?
Yeah, I go, I spend time in group. I'm now one-on-one at the VA. I'm medicated because I can never sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And they give me stuff that will eat up my kidneys, but I gotta get blood tests once in a while for it. And I have trouble with people sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Okay.
People's aren't my favorite things.
Let me just ask you too. With the time you spent in Saigon, you mentioned the mosquitoes and that. Did you ever contract malaria?
No,
Or?
and I never took all my pills either. We had to take those big orange pills, and sometimes I did, sometimes I just signed it and I said, the heck, who knows what they were giving us,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Now, did you showed me a letter from
Oh,
one of the officers. Now, was there anyone else that you had stayed in contact with besides him?
well, my best friend, we spent 11 months together, Frank Delphi. He's lives down in Queens. He used to live up in Manhattan by Lincoln Center in projects. And Frank was our armor.
Mm-hmm.
He was, I guess, in the engineers. He was trained as a ninja. I'm not sure, but he took care of our weapons and stuff.
Okay. Did you join any veterans organizations?
I tried, and I didn't last.
Okay.
I didn't last because I'm not good at organizations.
And you did mention you attended one or two of the
Yes,
reunions?
I went to one reunion at the wall. I figured that was an important one to do.
Mm-hmm.
I have a letter here from Lieutenant Hackett. Should I read it?
Sure, sure.
I'll tell you a little bit about Lieutenant Hackett. Lieutenant Hackett was a big Irishman. And I really loved him. And Frank and I, we were both smoking pot and stuff. And Lieutenant Hackett was always trying to catch us, but in a goofy type of way. And I always used to call him Herr Hauptmann. And Hauptmann is captain in German. And he always would say, I'm not a captain, I'm a lieutenant. But we got along great. We really did. And over the course of time, I went to the wall 3 times. And one time at the wall, I met a guy that was with us in the crowd. We were together over in Vietnam, so that's how I got in contact with Lieutenant Hackett early. And we talked on the telephone at holidays and more.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to the reunion, and he said to Frank and I, he said, I wouldn't have come here, because the whole time he lived in Arlington, Virginia, and he never went to the wall, and he was there for Tet. So he says, the only reason why I'm going is because you guys are here. So we spent a nice weekend with him at the wall and stuff. That could be nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then we still corresponded. Well, I got a letter from him in 2000. It's dated 5/29/2000. He says, hi, Doug. Just thinking about you and this Memorial Day. I hope all is going well for you and your wife. Liz and I spent 2-week vacation in Italy, the beginning of this month. Rented a villa in Tuscany with 4 other people, couples, or other couples. It was great. Best wishes and take care of yourself, Jack Hackett. Well, he died the next month of a severe heart attack.
Oh.
But this is very, very special, this
Mhm.
letter.
Okay.
I think they send us sometimes too young. I think they should send them when they're older. I was not
Yes,
prepared.
I've heard people say that before.
I was not prepared for it.
Mhm. All right, well, thank you very much for your
Okay.
interview.